performed then by the late Ellis B. Hyde, who lived in this town at that time, as a fitting last tribute in a memorial service for his respected teacher, Florence Johnson Toland. A quiet stillness fell over the old church as tears streamed down his face as his fingers interpreted the intense emotion which he felt in the hymn. The words, that refrain, and the deafening silence were imprinted indelibly on my 8-year-old mind that day. There were questions. What did the old church tower symbolize? Why would her troops be lost? Nobody could tell me, but they all felt the same intense emotion that I did. I'm Havilah Toland. I'm a lifelong resident of this area, and I can trace my maternal ancestry back 7 generations before the white men came to this area. This is my story, and I'm going to consider it part of my scrapbook. It's one of the many stories that hold intrigue for me in the valley. We always like to look back and have recollections of things in the past. I think everyone should have a scrapbook. What we're doing today is making a video scrapbook of some of the events that have occurred in the past. I'll go through some of my personal experiences with you, and I hope you will recognize some of the parts. This is part of my video scrapbook. The town is 175 years old. To be more exact is impossible. One might cite many equally valid starting points. I believe the reason for all references to origin is the geographic area. Nestled deep in a valley carved and created by glacial forces and eroding waters of antiquity, the view from atop a hill from any and every direction is an awe-inspiring experience of spectacular beauty and unsurpassed, which is unsurpassed anywhere in the world. A view that became for me as an adolescent an inspiration, a consolation, refuge, whatever you would like to call it, is this view of Springwater Valley from a spot on Bald Hill. As I look out over the valley, I'm reminded of a television commercial, and they celebrate the richness of the land. We in Springwater have celebrated frequently. I recall back in the late 30s when there was a celebration similar to our present anniversary. But that was back in the late 30s. As a highlight, a local photographer, Theodore Nash, was commissioned to make a silent movie of the area to show the society and the industry. I shall add a short historical note here about this. Ted Nash, as he was called, was an enterprising person. During those Great Depression days, he had built on a Model A Ford truck chassis a mobile home and photo lab, and traveled with his lab seasons and traveled up and down the eastern seacoast, bringing photography to remote one-room schoolhouses from New York to Florida. Same-day service was innovative and unheard of, but afforded the couple a comfortable existence. Ted passed to his rewards many years ago. His widow, who later became Mrs. Hugh McKay of our area, entrusted some of his works to my keeping. Among them was the documentary of Springwater. Being very old, brittle, and in poor repair, I've tried to rescue most of it and record it here on videotape for posterity. Please excuse the quality or lack of same, and try to picture in your own mind what it used to be like. The film began with scenes from one of my mother's farms, the homestead at the intersection of the Johnson Hill Road and the Canada Lake Road. Let us watch the film. To see a slight difference in the years, the youngest child you see in the film is speaking to you at this point some years later. We had shape, and of course, if anyone had a vehicle, in order to show the affluence, they had to have it in the film. This is my mother, hired man on the mowing machine. This is Luther Spitzer. And, of course, I was athletic back in those days also. It still hurts my feet to see me running on that newly mown stubble. Perch-in horses, I feel, are the most beautiful of the work horses, and it's possible because we raised them at that point. First day of school. My mother happened to be the teacher, and this is two of the citizens, Daisy Strait and Louis Spitzer, coming into District Number 5 Schoolhouse on the Johnson Hill Road, back down on the Canada Lake Road, with a barn in the background, which was one of 12 that was taken by an arson. I think it was in the early 50s. Again, please excuse the film. It's on its last reel, so to speak. I had an interest in animals. Possibly that's why I studied biology and taught in that field for 30 years. Back down in the metropolitan area, you can see the similarities and the differences between activity then at George Wheaton's IGA store. The delivery truck backs up. Possibly you'll recognize some of the people coming out here. This is George Wheaton himself loading the basket into the back of the truck. And as for the rest of the people, perhaps someone viewing this film can help me, because I do not remember these people. Next door at the Red and White, Reg Haynes is putting Coke into the cooler. Coke back then was a whole nickel a bottle. The Red and White also had a delivery service, in this case, convertible Phaeton. Would be nice to have that vehicle today. On the Johnson Hill Road, Bert Johnson and his son DeForest were the major. Bert's son Glenn busied himself designing and building one-engine airplanes using an engine from an old motorcycle, carving the propeller from ash from the woods, stretching canvas over wooden stays and held together with brass cables, one would question whether they could become airborne or not. Gaining speed, the terrain doesn't look too smooth. Lift off. Glenn gains considerable altitude. And while he's coming in for the landing, I will state ahead that due to perhaps a lack of experience as an aviator, he crash lands, and Ted Nash drops his camera, and that abruptly ends this scene. By the way, Glenn was not hurt in this particular landing. Back on the Webster's Crossing area, on the hill, a 4-horse team with the latest potato digging mechanism of the day. I do not know the actual family name, but I believe it may be the Humphrey family. My idea is that this truck is slightly overloaded. And this could possibly be the youngster Bill Humphrey. Down in the metropolitan area again, a 1937 Chevrolet drives up in front of the Higgins garage, now the fire department. This is what appears to me to be an Oldsmobile in front of the Lumbar Esso station. Francis Fisher had the freight delivery service, and his helper Russell Capron. In the background is the old steam engine which Francis used. At one time a bank, then a drugstore, then a hardware, and now a bookstore. You probably can recognize that one. The Village Inn at that time had an insulated room for 75 cents to $1. Next door, Mr. Risley raking leaves in what used to be an old stagecoach stop. Ernest We Met drives out one driveway and another to demonstrate the affluence of an automobile. This one I do not recognize. Don't know if I've ever seen that. Back on the potato farm, grading and sorting. Notice that the activity was not quite as rapid as it is today. People took things slowly, methodically. Up again at Webster's Crossing, in that area, at Mill Pond, grocery used to look like this when it was the Stewart Sawmill and Lumber Yard. The workers you might recognize. Again, if someone does recognize the people, I would like to know so I can identify them. Mr. Stewart in front of his sawmill, the housing of it at least. Up on Bald Hill, William Luther had the Belgian horse stallion of probably the area, the most beautiful big 3-year-old stallion. Called him Silver. He was a show horse as well as a stud for the Belgian workhorses around the area. Bill Luther married Martha Hyde of this town, and they raised their children on this farm overlooking Hemlock Lake, which you saw a moment ago. He went from the business of horse racing to selling beer. That was his beer cellar there just a moment ago. And one of the few fireproof homes built by Luther and Frederick Construction Company. Down in the village again, the new piece of equipment for the fire company was housed in the basement of the Esso garage at that point. Coming down Main Street with its crew. Again, only the driver, Lloyd Canute, do I recognize in this particular picture. Somewhere in the area there was an Atlantic white flash station. I have not been able to find out where exactly. Nor do I know the gentleman waving at us at this point. The main industry for a long time in Springwater has been had been, let's say, the Canon earphone company. At approximately the time of the First World War, Mr. Cannon came into Springwater, and with nothing more than a good business head and a desire to make a fortune, so to speak, he developed this factory. To show the affluence again of his workers, we show them at closing time leaving in their automobiles. We will see a couple scenes of people coming from the factory. Perhaps he'll be recognizable by some of you. The gentleman just coming out of the door and now going to our left, Bill Schaefer. That one I do remember because he used to work on our farm when I was a child. Mr. Cannon himself. Madge Nash at the meat market. Fred Seward behind the oyster bar, so to speak. To show the industry again, she goes across the street to the funeral parlor, which is now Mike's Busy Mark. She inspects the upholstery of one of the, what do we say, the furniture which he has at the establishment across the street. Somewhere is the Frank Wright barber shop, not at all related to the funeral parlor. Springwater has changed in some ways. As with other regions of the country, the smaller family farms have nearly disappeared. Only a few whose families have had the courage, manpower, and the perseverance still enjoy that proud heritage. The hamlet has become a bedroom community. The remnants of old family names, intermixed with newcomers attracted to our incomparable area, can be found everywhere. Some farms have become rural estates for some of our more affluent urbanites, and others have been assimilated into rather large commercial one-crop operation, such as the very important potato farms in the area. An incomparable natural resource of our area is the autumnal coloration. Spectacular than it had been in years. Let us take a drive down through the village and just enjoy the symphony of colors, symmetry, and everything else enjoyable. We'll continue on up to the other end of town. We'll pause for a moment and look back from the top of the hill and around just to see the spectacular setting in which we live. Then we'll head back into the village and continue our story from that point. auspicious undertakings, usually under the auspices of a fraternal organization. One such was the sponsorship of the District 7 American Legion Convention in 1982. The pavement flexed under the parading wheels of military and firefighting equipment, and the town park became a beehive of activity with the reenactment of a Confederate and Union conflict.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I'd like to introduce the parade marshal, and he is Major General Charles D. Barrett. He is United States Army retired, former commanding general of the 98th Division, and he is our parade marshal today. You saw him a few minutes earlier. He made a run of the parade route, and he's going to be sitting up here, and this day is kind of for him. We have some judges on the stands, and I look down the street and it looks like I see some lights, and that's a good sign.
That's a scary sight, isn't it? Oh, lights flashing. They're coming at us. Really? Do that. You know? Did you see the flag Mr. Toland made? Oh, from the corgis?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have approaching the reviewing stand here of the Livingston County Sheriff's Department patrol car. And the man right behind him there, we call him Midget, is Uncle Sam, played by Keith Clayson from Springwater. Does a nice job.
Too many tabs.
And approaching behind Uncle Sam is the color guard from Springwater. Keith, how you doing? Chairman James Walker from Post 905 and Commander Dale Pat. Good to see you.
Hey, Ivor, where's your Legion at?
Narrated is on film and is available for anyone who's interested in its completeness. However, for brevity's sake, here we'll go to the park where the Confederate contingent is marching across the parade ground. This was a fairly lengthy performance. However, again, for the sake of time, we will only catch part of the action.
You're wounded. Oh. Shoot him! Fire, they're slow. Center stage. This guy's made it. Let's move up. This is like so slow. Did you get that fish? Yeah. Yeah. Scary. She's. Oh, they took over the battlefield.
Fire from the right! Fire! Fire!
I gotta change your battery. Okay. I can't see anything. You're lost in the fog.
Leaders, let me explain that the two young cameramen that were part of my sportscasting staff of the student radio station WRHR, which I sponsored at the time. They came to film the parade and were unaware of the fact that they were to be in the middle of a battlefield. Further, there was to have been a script for the battle which was enacted. However, due to some misunderstanding, there was no script, there was no reading, so that people were unaware of actually what was happening. Although the enactment was of an actual battle, the various members of the Union group and the Confederate group of Mosby's Rangers under the command of Colonel Donald Stumbo each had a place and reenacted that which someone had done during the Civil War. Part of our memories. Shortly after the exciting celebration, there was a much smaller gathering, but one which held for me realization and understanding, revelations, if you will, that many feel and react to, but cannot define or understand. It was in the afternoon of July 6, 1982, at the front lawn of my home, the former home of George and Lola Annette, and their daughters Dawn and Vita, and which time chairs and so forth were assembled, and the town officiated, the town supervisor, excuse me, officiated at the dedication
ceremony here for the dedication of the Springwater town flag. Something that's a little unusual. We're very pleased as many of you people came as you did. At this time, I would like to just recognize, if I may, some of the people from the area. Colonel Dick Snyder, and members of the Legion Post, members of the fireman group, Boy Scouts and any other organizations that I've omitted, I didn't mean to. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to call upon a couple of the Boy Scouts at this time to lead the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag, not the Springwater flag. Would a couple of Boy Scouts come forth? Mike and Scott.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, boys. At this time, I'd like to ask Havilah Toland, the designer and producer of the Springwater town flag, to come forth and present the flag. With words, Havilah.
I don't really know whether to be honored is quite the word here, because it's quite a thrill. The flag idea came to me some time ago, and when I presented it to the town board, they accepted, and I went to work on it. It has been used. It led the color guard for the convention parade and has been flying from the mast here, but the official dedication is this evening. So I guess without further ado, I would like to, we say, unfurl the particular flag which I'm presenting to the town at this point.
My scrapbook holds many pleasant memories, but probably one of the finest that I have is of that day in 1982. There are many reasons. I would ask several of the people from the town to speak about their ideas of what inspirations, what were their first thoughts at the raising of the flag. From the older members that had grown up on farms overlooking the village, there was the expression of the magnetism, the grandeur, the intrigue, which I had tried to capture, even though at that point I hadn't yet understood it. When I thought of the flag idea, I thought, let me go back in history a little bit, way back. There are some things about this area which are very special. The last nesting pair of bald eagles in the whole of New York State chose Hemlock Lake for their abode. On the banks of both Hemlock and Canada Ice Lake is the mountain laurel, and it's the northernmost reach of this plant. Perhaps some of our forefathers, in attempting to explain something without the benefit of scientific knowledge, would have developed a legend. That's what I tried to do. In the eyes of a former Indian, I tried to imagine how he would think. The Great Spirit commissioned sight was so awe-inspiring that he dropped the garland of laurel, and it grew at the spot where it was dropped. And the eagle chose to guard forever the area by choosing it for his nesting place. The flag depicts the legend, and I would hope that perhaps some that are viewing this particular videotape might think through and think of this flag as being a symbol of the magnetic attraction of the grandeur that we can enjoy if we only but look. That day I felt it, with the young and the old speaking, giving me the inspiration. Afterwards I came into my house, and it came to me the grandeur of the area was the old church tower of my mother's hymn. If people don't take the time to enjoy it and to appreciate it, in other words, the bell doesn't toll for them, they are definitely lost. "42 years had it been since I had even heard the melody or thought of it, and yet it rang clear in my mind. I came into the house, sat down at the organ, and played. In my mind's eye, it was a humid, hazy day. I was looking out over Springwater Valley when an eagle flew overhead. Nature perfected in this our own Springwater